I did a video a while ago about an electrical engineer and geology guy that was never a climate scientist or published any peer-reviewed papers, running a conspiracy and pseudoscience website that's a Karl Popper fan site. Basically, he's just repeating what someone else said, and he's given more credit. Saying two people, basically demonizing two people out of thousands and thousands of climate scientists, claiming they destroyed temperature records about 20 years ago and caused scientists to pursue a superstitious relationship between temperature and CO2 instead of doing actual research. And I made some comments. Mostly, as you can tell, if a person has no expertise in the area, they're no better than me or you, number one. Number two, going after two people because someone else said you should, that's not research either. That's fanboyism. And deciding that a relationship between temperature changes on Earth and carbon dioxide levels is a superstitious relationship, but you can check on them. As you go further and further back on the timeline, it gets really, really hard to justify making any catastrophic assumptions and assertions, but if you collect enough data, you can at least figure out a trend. But anyway, then someone says, it was ironic for me to say something with a cursing attack on the person. The person's motivations when they stop lying, when they get caught lying, then we can assume that we should look back and maybe assume they were lying, is that they're just trying to unexist climate change. They're trying to unexist human beings have an influence on it. Not because they believe it's impossible because it's God's will, even though they might say that. Not because they believe it's some giant conspiracy by Al Gore, but because they don't like the effect it might have on industry in the United States and abroad, being able to burn fuel, put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but generate power so we can get shit done. That's literally the problem I have with them. Their entire response has nothing to do with any compelling, reasonable path of logic. It has to do with trying to unmake a fact. It's poking holes in science and then claiming you're a scientist. You're not a boat captain if you keep burning the sails off. That's a double entendre backflip. So here we go. So much irony and unwind here. You stating that science does not use emotional words and also respects the consensus of experts in a given scientific field. What I meant to say, if that's literally a direct quote, I'm not even checking, is it's supposed to be that way. And anybody who doesn't do that way, especially in the world of science, that appeals to emotion and doesn't want to think, I criticize. I criticized one guy who he's a physics teacher. He's a good one. But he decided he did not like one way of modeling electricity flowing through wires, because if you did it, a certain conundrum that showed a particular theory was wrong disappeared. Basically, depending on how you do the numbers in your model, you can find out you made a mistake with your model. His preference, I'm not going to bring it up, who he is, was to leave one particular model in discussion, like a straw man argument, say it's wrong because he can test for it, and then ignore the fact that he moved the probes 90 degrees out of phase, maybe subconsciously, to make the problem go away. He created a proof that would back up his bias. Me and a couple of other people have critiqued him. He's a physics teacher. I don't agree with him. Also, he's simply wrong. But he has an emotional response to being told that he is wrong, just like everybody else does. Me too. Waptek ranted with a cursing attack on the person. The person is the problem in this case, not the theory. The idea is that, and this is the thing I am going to critique very non-emotionally, as poppycock, CO2 can't affect temperature. That's bullshit. You can test it in a room-sized environment, in a test tube-sized environment. You can use a very large-scale experiment and find out that CO2 levels, when talking about layers of gases, when the layers start forming under certain pressure levels, you can prove that CO2 retains heat. It is a greenhouse gas, period, full stop. It's not a discussion. It's been proven. Move on. No. Let's keep doing. The guy was a website about Karl Popper and a bunch of other people. All of the people who are involved in this, the climate can't change because of humans, but we're polluting the planet, and somehow chemtrails are real, and also weather modification. Do it feigning an interest in saying that only God can modify the environment, which appeals to a specific group of people that will scream whatever you want them to at that point. And another group of people that do not want to be held responsible for making cheap products and cheap energy available and not having to pay the piper when it comes to fucking up the planet. Just like every other industrialized situation we've had where we fucked up the water supply, the air supply, killed off all the plants. You can't bitch about Roundup, glyphosate, and dead bees and say that humans can't have an effect on the planet. That's fucking bullshit. Yeah, I'm cussing. I'm a little upset with you. This stubborn denialism is what I fight on this channel. And also, I'm going to say this again. Al Gore did the same fucking thing. I don't like ignorant people representing smart subjects. They shouldn't. Politicians are the worst case scenario I can think of. I mean, really. So here we go. Consensus of experts means absolutely nothing in science. I'm not sure where you're going here. That only observations and verification of data repeatability have authority. They are basing it on that, and it is repeatable, and it does have authority because of that. And the consensus of scientists, because some of them are bought off on both sides, the majority of them, and the consensus is that information works. It's actually additionally to observation or repeatability. Again, I'm talking about experiments and real-life observations. Any papers which challenge the preferred narrative are being blocked from publication. But you keep linking to them so they weren't blocked. One or two were removed for literally faking information. Meanwhile, somebody going back and through and saying, we made a mistake with this block of data, and we're going to use the buoy data preferentially instead of this other data that was flawed, you call that falsifying data. You're free to critique it. Nobody's blocking you. You lied. That is a conspiratorial trope. That's a dog whistle. Test for credibility is now lost. Another irony is the point that the cause and effect seem to be reversed. There exactly disproves CO2 temperature correlation. No, it just means our observational data doesn't match up with what we expect, and it might mean that we've gotten it off by a certain period of time. Also should point out that CO2 delay time is a fairly short period of time further back. And then further and further back it gets wider, which means we're getting the dates wrong on one of them. I mean, it could actually be backwards. Or we could just be guessing the dates from the CO2 trapped in air bubbles and ice wrong by a couple of decades. And the other thing is, I'm not the one making that claim, they are. The sunspot records are likely good. No, you're trying to prove the sun's doing it again. Again, the sun's energy output is plus or minus 1 part in maybe 1,000. If you want to believe that, that's fine. But the curves don't match. The environment doesn't behave that way because of sunspot activity. It simply doesn't. So you're a sunspot believer that wants to make it to where oil companies don't have to stop being bad. Cigarettes don't cause cancer. And apparently, because someone wants to believe a certain thing because they want to get money out of it, 1950 cigarettes that use literal asbestos can't cause cancer either, apparently. No, it has to be caused by vaccinations. That's another video I had to do. The strained level of batshittery here is amazing. I don't know where either he or you got your temperature data from. People recording temperature on thermometers. People recording data much more fine-grained recently from hundreds of different sources that have nothing to do with each other. Some of them doing it because it's necessary to make sure a ship can go through water correctly. Some people just observing water temperature so they can figure out when fish will be there because they notice fish respond to temperature changes. Lots of different sources that have nothing to do with trying to prove that you're not the chosen ones or that the oil industry is saintly. These are just people observing shit. I'm not concerned enough to dig into it. You're not concerned enough to dig up where the data sources are, but you claim they're all fucking lies. Such and such has won hundreds of battles and clearly showing evidence to discredit alarmist claims. Some guy named Tony. No, he didn't. I'm one of many people he can't debunk because I'm demanding he provide proof and data. And the Tony you're talking about, let's just call him Tony. I don't know who he is. I don't know which Tony. There's several of them, by the way. No, I'm not kidding. There are. What's with all the Tonys? You want to believe that the environment is exclusively controlled by the sun by showing graphs of sunspot activity that have been falsified. When we look up the actual sunspot counts, like you said, it's easily recorded, it doesn't show a curve that matches any fucking thing that's happened in history, except for one place someone found in Northern Europe that had a really long winter or something a long time ago, anecdotally. Doodly-doo. Meanwhile, the rest of the planet has no record of this happening, so it wasn't a global freeze. Sort of like that global flood some of you types like to believe in. Next, the sunspot activity one done by a specific other physicist only worked for 3 decades and fails before and after those decades, which means her hypothesis simply doesn't fucking work. Her equations don't work. None of the shit works. Sunspot activity does not dictate the temperature. Period. Full stop. Prove otherwise. Prove it. Don't argue with me. Just put up the proof and put up with being critiqued. I don't think he was trying to claim that sunspots are all that caused warming here. Yes, he was. That is something that he said boldly. It has to be anything. I'm just kidding about that last part. Only a little. No, the whole deal is these people are put in line to defend whatever they invest in. I'm investing in the oil company nearby, so they defend it. There are other correlations to consider. The correlations to consider you don't want to look at is CO2 matches up really closely to the curve for heat. You're ignoring something that's sitting there going derp-a-derp-a-derp at you. If he slid the time scales, that's not cool. If he did slide the time scales. And again, we're talking about our data source here, who falsified the time scale. Well, it happened before or after. The curve doesn't match. They're not related to each other. It's not just correlation or causation problem or temporal causation. The person, Tony, you're referring to, I get these all mixed up. There's hundreds of these people battling out to see which one can kiss the biggest amount of oily ass here. He falsified his data. It's nothing compared to the truly fraudulent believers, so many others. Yes, mainstream science, thousands of them, studying completely unrelated things, from chewing gum to literally beehive economics, making measurements for temperature and collecting all that data. They're all in on it. It's all falsified. I don't know where your data source is, and I refuse to look it up. I'm done. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. Come back here with an actual attitude problem turned off. Bye.